I'm Craig Beaumont-Flynn. Welcome to Beyond the Design, a show that gives you a peek behind the curtain of the design industry and shares the stories of those that are the driving force behind it. Well, today on Beyond the Design, we have Sarah in Rosenhaus. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
So why don't you go ahead and start and tell us a little about you and your story.
Oh my goodness, it's a long story. I've been around for a while. So I'm born and raised in Santa Monica, California. I've never left. And I kind of got into design just because when I was a little girl, my grandma had me a lot of the time. And I was always arranging like the bookshelves in her house and her coffee table with all of her little like knickknacks and objects and things like that. And my mom would take me with her to the fabric store because she would take classes to sew her own clothes because she had always made her own clothes. And I remember trying to make a flannel shirt because it was the 90s and I was trying to be grunge, and it just was not working for me. Like I couldn't figure out how to do all the details and make buttonholes and things like that. But making drapes was really easy for me because it was just these like flat panels that I could sew on my own. And so I remember being like 15 years old and I had all these different drapes. I would have sheers and, another layer of like decorative drapes. And I was always changing my room and decorating in different ways. And
so you had a calling at a very early age.
From a very early age. Yeah. And, it just kind of progressed. When I was 19, I got a job through a family friend working in photography on movies. And
Wow.
The photographer started using me as an assistant on some of his shoots outside of the movies. And I was constantly like fussing with the models and the environments. And he kind of got to the point where he was like, "You're so good at this. I don't want to have my photos without you here because the way you make them look, like aside from what he was capturing." And that kind of sparked something in me. And I just kind of started to put together like, okay, I like making rooms pretty. I'm good at like seeing how things need to look on camera. And I loved taking pictures. I had an eye for it. But I just was always drawn to interiors and making my room pretty and trying different things. And I was always exploring and doing things that I wasn't seeing other people do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So did you say, okay, well, this is my career. This is the path I'm going to take. And how did you get started in having your own firm?
Well, so after I was working with the photographer, I decided to take some classes at Santa Monica College here in Santa Monica. They had a really good interior architecture program. And I started taking like fundamental classes. I loved the history of furniture. I took some architecture classes as well because I love space and kind of the way that like buildings interact with their environment and things like that. And perhaps had I been better at math and more disciplined in my younger years, I would have become an architect. But I just didn't have that drive and discipline or aptitude for math. But I just loved all the classes at SMC. And in my second semester, one of our teachers sent out this list of architecture and design firms that were looking for interns. And I just started calling all of them. And I was just so hungry to be in design in any way that I could be. And so I got a job working for an architecture firm, and they, hired me as their resource librarian and just kept giving me opportunities to like select the tile for a big bathroom in, some big corporate building. But I was like, great, I'll take it, and I started building a lot of relationships with like the fabric and furniture and materials reps because they were coming through me. And I got a great education being in that architecture firm and managing their resource library because I learned so much about everything that goes into creating spaces.
Right. Hands-on training.
Yeah, it was really hands-on. And I continued taking classes at SMC. And And then after about a year and a half with the architecture firm, the company Vitra, which is a European company, they're basically like, well, I don't know if I should say it, but they're like the Herman Miller of Europe. And,
Mhm.
they've got all the rights in Europe to Eames and all of that. They had opened a showroom in Santa Monica and they were looking for team members. And I went and applied and I got a job and I was basically running the showroom and then also working as an assistant to the sales team, helping to create layouts with all of their office products and stuff like that. And again, it was an amazing education. And my house still has all kinds of Vitra furniture in it, which I'm so lucky. I've got all the Jean Prouvé. Um, and from there, once I got the job at Vitra, I stopped taking classes at SMC. So I never actually got a degree.
So when did you decide that you wanted to work for yourself and be an entrepreneur and have your own firm?
Well, Vitra was amazing. But after I was there for about 2 years, they decided that their American endeavor was not working out the way that they had hoped. And so they decided to downsize to a much smaller kind of in-house run team and they closed our
Mm.
showroom. And at that time, I had the opportunity to go and work for other similar type companies in terms of creating workspace environments with, some of the bigger like Steelcase and companies like that. Or I had started taking on some very small private clients while I was at Vitra. I went, maybe I should just explore this. I'm really enjoying it. I had spent a little bit of time on the commercial side and it was fun. But the journey for me was really about getting to know the client and that relationship and the home. And I just took the leap. And
Mhm.
when Vitra closed, I decided to just focus on taking on my own private clients instead of getting another job.
All right. So what is your main focus? What sector of the industry?
Residential. Yeah.
And what is your design process?
Wow, that's such a great question because we've been really exploring that lately. Because I hear that and I'm like, process. Okay, what does that mean?
Do you just throw things against a wall like I have here, or do you start to
No,
yeah.
no, I guess I'm glad that we're having this conversation because maybe it will actually help me clarify. It's actually pretty clear for me. Um, I'm very intuitive and I'm driven by who the client is, um, what the space wants, what the space is communicating. And then obviously
Mhm.
there's my perspective that I bring in my approach. And my approach is pretty consistent, but the other two variables are not necessarily. And that's kind of where the fun lies for me is in creating that mashup of my perspective, who the client is and what the space wants and what that unique expression is.
Mhm.
And so it's a combination of to start meeting the client, getting to know them. I kind of have an intake, but it's very relaxed. I have questions that I ask that help me get a sense of who they are. And then obviously visiting the space. Typically we're working on renovations, restorations. um, and then from there, I create a narrative and really try to express to the client what that narrative is. And hopefully, I have nailed it for them and also express something that they didn't realize was within them. And then from there, we start to put a visual representation to that narrative.
So is there a Sarah Rosenhaus aesthetic or design?
Not in like a formulaic way that you could look at it to me,
Mhm.
um, that you could look at and go, "Oh, okay, that's what she does, and I'm calling her for that." No, definitely not. Um, I think that in everything that I do, I try to bring a level of refinement and sophistication. I'm definitely inspired by, um, European sensibilities, but I'm also deeply steeped in like the mid-century and Bauhaus um, idioms, for
Mhm.
lack of a better word. So, I think all of that is part of what influences the way that I approach things. But because I'm so uniquely focused on who the client is and what the space wants and the narrative that we're trying to create, I don't think that there's a way for there to be one particular aesthetic that comes through.
Do you ever get creative block? Like
all the time. You?
And how do you work yourself through that?
I take space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am this is so off the design topic, but maybe not. I've been playing the piano since I was 3 years old, and,
Fantastic.
yeah, I love it. I mean, it's kind of an emotional expression for me. I don't like to perform for people, I just like to
Mhm.
play for me. But, if I'm if I'm trying to learn a really difficult passage and my fingers keep stumbling and my brain won't, like, allow it to settle,
Mhm.
I'll go away from it and I'll just take, a week or even sometimes more. I can't do that with my clients
Yeah.
necessarily, but what it taught me was that, if I go away from it and I just let it be, the muscle memory is there because I'll have played that passage over and over and over again with my fingers and to just give it some space and then come back to it, usually I'm able to move through it in a way that I couldn't when I was so intensely focused on it. And
Mhm.
so I think that same approach applies to probably everything we do in life, but definitely my design process, where if I'm really feeling like I'm having a hard time figuring out where to go with something, I'll just take a break and do something else and let it sit and marinate. And, whenever I come back to it,
How do you
usually
do that
now what I'm
when
finding sorry?
how do you do that when you have a client, especially in the, residential sector, um, that is all over the place, like shiny ball, and how do you kind of narrow them down to say, "Okay, here's where we need to go. This is the path that you need to take," instead of, being overpulled or what would the term be? Just looking at Pinterest and looking online and watching TV shows, and if they've given you a certain format, saying, "This is what we want, this is the style," and they start kind of throwing other stuff at you, you know? It's like, "Oh, I saw this. Oh, I saw this." How do you narrow down your clients to stay the path and directed?
I think that's the importance of the narrative, It's always bringing them back to, this is the story that we're trying to tell here, and does that
Mhm.
fit the story, I'm working with a client right now who just wants everything to be like luxe, 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 like the ultimate in luxury. And but it's also like probably one of the most quiet and refined and sophisticated spaces I've ever worked on, which is a dream for me because
Mhm.
I mean, I think that there is so much to be said for refinement, and it takes talent and skill to be able to really allow yourself not to over design something.
Right.
And I'm even seeing the client, we were at the stone yard looking at marble for the kitchen, and the whole entire home is just paneled white oak and raw, unfilled travertine. And it's so stunning. And there's like everything is tonal in texture and it's magnificently beautiful. And then he sees this slab of Calicut viola, which is magnificent as well. And he wants it because it reminds him of, old buildings in Rome and the luxury of all of that. And it would be very easy to get swayed into using that, but it's like you have to think about when you walk into this space, it's so quiet and tonal and textural and refined. And that's the beauty of it. That's saying so much in itself that while that Calicut viola does communicate luxury, it doesn't
Mhm.
fit space. In this space, it just looks like we're trying too hard, you know?
Right.
So it's like, how do you communicate that we will achieve that element of luxury that you want, but we have to approach it from a different perspective, you know?
You mentioned briefly mid-century and, other, aesthetics. What is your own personal aesthetic and design taste that kind of emphasizes and says who you are?
I don't know. I need a designer to help me figure that out.
That is so true, though. That's so true. Architects and designers can never work on their own projects because I think we get, pulled, and it's like we're the probably our worst own client.
Oh my gosh, because I just want everything I see. I'm like, I love that. I
Exactly.
love that. It's so pretty. Who am I?
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, I don't know. I mean, I like things quiet. I like things comfortable.
Mhm.
I've inherited so much Vitra. I have, Jean Prouvé everywhere, which I can't complain about one
Right.
bit. So the front room of my house is kind of just a gallery of, beautiful pieces. But my family room, I've got a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old boy. Like everything is about performance,
And
like
longevity.
yeah, it's just, I've got a beautiful Calvin high performance linen on my sofa that's a slip cover. And there have been hot Cheeto fingers on it. And it's come right out, and it still looks great, but it's casual and comfortable,
Right.
and people walk in and they think it's beautiful, but it's definitely built to last. Like I can't be precious about the spaces where we live. Um, but that's kind of my front room,
Right, right.
that gives me
Can't
that.
always be picture perfect.
No, but I mean, that's the beauty of life, right? Like
Right.
life's a little bit messy and the perfection comes in that. So,
What
um,
motivates you as a creative individual?
say that one more time.
What motivates you as a creative individual?
That's a great question. What does motivate me? Being of service. I love the process of, you know, being there with a client, shepherding them through the design process,
Mm,
watching the surprise and delight as things unfold, and knowing that I was able to make a difference for someone that has lasting impact. Like our home is our sanctuary. And if you can create a space that really nurtures people and um, allows them the freedom and comfort to kind of love on themselves a little bit, then there's nothing better.
mm. Do you get distracted by the multitude of Pinterest and print and TV shows and other things, or are you well-focused, um, creative? Like, you meet with a client, you have your narrative, you know which way to go, or do you just start pulling in any direction that you can find, or go shopping and see various things that you wanna install or incorporate in your design? Are you pretty much, because I think creatives sometimes are very left and sometimes very right, or they're kinda like a little bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a musician, right? So there's definitely like, I feel like that bridges the gap between left and right because there is some
Mhm.
math in being a musician, but then there's also creativity and opening yourself up and letting it like transcend you. And I think that the creative process is that across the board. Um, I'm very focused, but I allow space for the chaos to come in because I think that's kind of where creativity happens.
Right.
But it happens within a structure for me, for sure. Um, I never want to pigeonhole myself into like this is the way that I work and these are the things that I use. Like I love being exposed to new things, different ways of thinking. But for me personally, the best way that I can do that is through having a structured process to a certain extent. Probably because it makes me feel safe because I can be anxious.
Right.
So when things feel out of control, I can't focus. you know. But yeah, it's with every project because everyone's different. I never know what that inspiration is going to be. I never know where it's going to come from. I just sit back and trust that in learning who the client is and creating that narrative, like every step just kind of becomes apparent as I start walking.
So, have you ever had that type of client that just doesn't know what they want or they can't visualize what you're trying to interpret for them?
I mean, I think that's a lot of clients. And I don't
Sometimes,
necessarily
yeah.
think that our clients need to come to us knowing what they want. I think that's our job.
Right.
Be able to listen to them and hear what it is that they're expressing in their not knowing. If they knew, they could go do it for themselves, and then we'd be out of work.
True. Yeah, very true. Have you ever had that type of client that's just all over the place and you have to rein them in?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've had
Yeah.
clients, especially when I was younger, and didn't really know how to kind of focus, or I didn't have the self confidence to kind of stand more firm.
Mm.
It was almost like I got hired to be a personal shopper for people who just wanted to see every possible option available.
Right.
But I don't really experience that anymore because we do create such a strong narrative with our clients and we do educate them so clearly from the start that they understand what we're doing and they really trust us to kind of allow us to take their project in our hands and provide them with good work.
So is most of your work in the California region or LA basin?
Lately, yeah, I've worked in New York quite a bit because I have family there, and so I used to go back and forth. But the logistics of working in Manhattan are not for me.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily something that I'm drawn to
Right.
currently. Maybe it's because I'm way too laid back California. We've had a project in Costa Rica, which was
Wow.
amazing and interesting and very different. I would do it again, but I'm also not out there like, actively marketing myself as that. And then, through the pandemic, we had projects kind of all over little, things that we were doing. We did a kitchen and, a couple of other little decorating things, just,
Mhm.
remote via Zoom. So we can work anywhere, but I do like being local. I like being with my clients in person.
So your main focus is residential. Is there any other sectors that you want to get your feet wet?
I mean, I've done some commercial.
Mhm.
Um, Even on my own, I've done an editing house and I've done a couple of clothing um, hybrids. They weren't full retail; they were kind of like work retail
Mhm.
spaces. Which is interesting. Um, And those are fun, but I have to say the narrative of creating home for people. I'm a mom, I'm a homemaker.
Right.
Um, I really love that. My associate who works with me, Jordan, would kill me if I didn't say that we would love to do a boutique hotel. But, Jordan would love to do a boutique hotel.
It's out there now.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, yes, I would love it. I would not. I'm always open to opportunities as they arise. So there's
Mm,
not anything I would necessarily say no to. It's more, am I a fit for the client, and is the client a fit for us?
correct.
So it's not so much scope. It's relationship. It's dynamic. It's chemistry. You know.
So during your tenure as your in the industry and having your own firm, is there any milestones or goals you wanna set for yourself or that you've hit or that you wanna peak at?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I just want to keep growing.
Yeah.
As a human being and in my business. I'm not interested in becoming such a big firm that I'm not like hands on with all of my projects. So I've kind of maintained a pretty small boutique approach in that regard because of the fact that the relationship is so important to me and I love that aspect of it and I don't want to be
Mhm.
removed from it. I think the highlight of my career was restoring a Ray Cappy home in Encino. And I mean, we took the house apart and put it back together. I remember
Yeah,
standing
well,
in the living room and the roof was off and all the trees were above and it was like standing in this beautiful tree house. And when we were done, Ray and his wife Shelly came out to walk the property and he was just so pleased with everything that we had done. And he said to me, if anyone ever wants to restore one of my homes, you should be the one to do it. And
hey,
that, I mean, I don't know that you can really get more of a compliment than that,
that's a pretty good one, yeah.
A good one. Yeah. So, I mean, just being able to be in his presence and experience that and have him see what I did with his work and then have him acknowledge me and also just to be able to walk through with him and say, what were you thinking when you did this? And what were you thinking when you did this? And, understand his approach from a first person, experience was pretty amazing.
Do you think you learn, from your clients?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Oh yeah.
What
Yeah.
is one of the I think what is the most significant thing you think you've learned from one of your clients?
I mean, I think the most significant things I've learned are to add different clauses to the contract. Um, but I mean, just different ways of looking at things. Like they remind me all the time. Just don't get rigid.
Mhm.
Don't get stuck in your ways. Like, sometimes they ask questions because they're not in design that are so outside of the way that I think or the way that I would approach things, and it makes me stop and go, "Oh, that's interesting." Because we've kind of we learn all these rules, you know,
Right.
you do it this way, or these are the standards, and then a
Mhm.
client coming out of like no background at all will say something and say, "Huh, yeah." I don't have an example of it particularly, but yeah,
Well, I
I
think it's
love.
that perspective, just like art. I think in design is an art form, and so everyone has a different perspective of what they see or engages in the feeling or things like that. So I think it's a good way to further expand longevity within your career when you're actually learning from your clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learn from everything. That's kind of my approach in life is every time I have an experience, it's like, okay, now what can I take away from this? What can I learn? You know?
Do you think the industry is inundated with too much how tos and do it yourself and easy fixes? And
I don't know. I mean,
I think it's
there's,
elevated the industry, but it's also, I think, limited as well because this is my own assumption, my own view. But it's like some clients think, oh, it only costs this. They did it so quickly, or the time frame. It's like, oh, they showed it on TV and it only took 2 days. It's like, well, no, it probably took 2 months, and you know,
yeah. I mean, I guess, there's such a spectrum of what clients are looking for,
hmm
and there are just some people who are going to be more at the DIY level, and those aren't the clients that I'm working with, you know. Um, and I appreciate that there's definitely that genre that,
correct,
there needs to be that information for them. I do agree with you in terms of like some of what people are seeing on TV and the misinformation that it adds to the amount of educating that we need to do, which
right.
is, just part of our job across the board anyway. I mean, it's so much of what we do is either educating clients or being their psychologist, and then on the side we get to make things pretty. Um, but I don't know, I mean, I think that there's something for everyone, and so it doesn't necessarily, I don't find it off-putting that all of that's going on, because the client that I'm looking to work with particularly isn't interested by any of that information anyway, you know.
Do you do everything from nuts to bolts to a whole project, or do you also do someone just wants the kitchen or just a bathroom besides
Yeah,
just
I
a whole
mean,
entire house?
yeah, we're full service. We can take you from, a patch of dirt to a completely realized home and garden. And at the same time, if you just want to redo your bathroom, we can do that. Again, it's about the connection with the client and the relationship.
Mhm.
I'm really looking for, people that we're a fit for, and that we want to spend that chunk of time with as we, journey through this life. Because it's a marriage, these
Yeah.
projects that we take on, so um, yeah, it's not so much about scope, it's about, what can we create together.
What excites you, being a designer?
Oh my gosh, like getting a fresh box of tile delivered and opening it up and
Like a kid in a candy store?
oh my gosh, I love it so much, or like just walking through the design center and like seeing all of the fabrics and all the different things that are being created and all of the different like materials that are at our fingertips, and like, you know, walking into a space after it's been demoed and being able to like finally really see the potential of what it is that you're creating start to come to life, like the
Mhm.
whole process. But yeah, there's nothing like opening up a box of fresh new tile. Oh my God, I love it. Yeah,
I
that
heard it.
probably sounds so
I
silly.
heard it. I heard a designer once said, "It's like giving birth." I'm like, "Yeah, it's got the pain. It's got, the time frame, the long 9 months or plus, and then at the end of it, you see it born. It comes to life, you know? You handed someone their life,
Yeah.
or their new life, and so it's like, yeah, I can't say it felt like childbirth, but I
I'll
could
take a
see,
house renovation any
comparison.
over childbirth. I've done it twice. The amazing thing about houses is that they don't bleed, I always say that to
True,
clients when they have,
true.
when they get freaked out about things. It's like, this is okay, you know?
Yeah. And they
Sponsors
don't
don't,
talk back.
they don't. I mean, sometimes they do, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting. So
yeah.
when you first talk to a client, what's your approach? How do you build that connectivity and that I guess because you kind of do become an extended part of their family because you
Oh,
have to
yeah.
know about their lifestyle and who they are and how they live. And so how do you build that trust and that connectivity with your clients?
I listen, you know, um, ultimately, I'm there to be of service. You know, they're calling me because they've got something that they want to accomplish with their home or their space that they feel that they can't do on their own. Um, and I'm there to help facilitate that. And the only way to do that is to hear what it is that they're trying to achieve, what they believe is the problem. And then from there, I mean, I have a bunch of questions that I ask to help deepen that understanding. Um, and I think that just, and then reflecting back what I've heard from them, and creating that narrative, and hopefully I've nailed it with the narrative. And I think that that creates a sense of trust in knowing that they've been heard and understood, you
Mhm.
know?
So when because I maybe it hasn't happened to you, I know it does with some, designers and creatives when they have to become a therapist. When you have 2 factors, husband and wife partners with different views and different, ideas of what they wanna see, how do you deal with that relationship and that trust factor that you're hearing both ends, but completely 2 different views?
Yeah. Again, I'll bring it back to the narrative. I think it's a really wonderfully unifying thing to have because it is something that is separate from all of us. It
Mhm.
is the story of what this home, what this project will be. And if we're able to always come back to and ask ourselves, what's the best way to tell this story? Is this object? Is this item, whatever it is, conducive to that? It really takes it all from the individual, and sometimes it's just hearing both people and then saying, okay, I heard you both, and this is what I think is the best way to
Right.
do this. And I'm the expert. And I don't necessarily say it in that way. But, ultimately, it's about, kindly reminding them, you have me here for a reason. Please trust me that I will give you the best version of what it is that you want.
Are you a traditionalist in the essence that form and function play more a part than bells and whistles or the new gadgets out there? Or
Probably. I mean, would you call that traditionalist or would you call that like Bauhaus, right? Like, isn't that
yeah,
derivative of that? Yeah. I mean, I guess to me, yes, it's traditional. I feel like I'm I feel like I'm very clean and modern just in terms
mm,
of like, the lines that I select, but I think that I'm more traditional in my approach. Um, yeah, and I'm so inspired by nature, which comes back to that kind of mid-century um,
mhm.
approach. Where you're really looking at the indoor to outdoor. Um, but yeah, I would say that yes, that is my approach.
So, what's on the horizon for you as a designer?
On the horizon, I mean, we've got some really wonderful clients right now. We spent a year kind of rebranding and redoing the website, and just I had to take a moment and go, okay, as I come into this next kind of season of my life, because I've been doing this for 20 years now. Um, I just had to kind of take a pause and reflect back and look at kind of what has my business been, which I've been very fortunate to have had amazing projects and clients and opportunities. And now moving forward, what do I want this next season to be? And I think that we built a really solid foundation, and I'm very excited about the projects that we have going on right now because they're very reflective of who I am and the work
Mhm.
that I want to be doing. Um, I've kind of realized that over the years, I make a lot of custom pieces for clients. And so we're in the process of developing a catalog of pieces. And
Oh,
Trying to
fantastic.
figure out, yeah, what to do with that and how to kind of move that forward. Um, but yeah, I mean, work-life balance. I've got two teenagers, so being a mom is important to me, having freedom in my business, having amazing clients. I'm pretty simple.
Well, that's good. Simple life is good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned custom pieces and doing for your clients. So are you thinking about launching a signature furniture collection, or is
I
it
mean, I would
lighting,
love.
or
Yeah, no, it's furniture. It's
Mhm.
furniture. I get a lot of like every client, whenever we finish a project, they're like, my favorite pieces are the ones that you've made for us, you know? And there have been a few pieces that just really stand out to me as pieces I think would do well, out in the market. So I don't really know how to even approach doing that, but it's something that we're kind of, at least right now, pulling together like a catalog of
Mhm.
images of things that we've made so that we have something to present.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
a good marketing tool, and it helps build the brand. Um,
Yeah.
so your people can actually identify you with on a different level than just your design services.
Yeah.
So besides maybe tackling a boutique hotel at some point, is there any other goals that you want to achieve as a creative or a furniture collection?
Yeah. I mean, I want to continue to do what I'm doing, like I'm, I'm I'm satisfied. Like I love the clients that we have. I love the projects that, come into us. I would love to launch a product line to, further get that kind of part of myself out there.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel very lucky. Yeah.
That's
So
fantastic.
more of
It's a
the
good
same.
place to be. What's
It
that?
is. Yeah, just more of the same.
Yeah. To go back to your design aesthetic, do you feel like you have a California lifestyle essence?
I think so.
Mhm.
I mean, it's definitely not the beach approach that I think maybe that's old anyway now, like the blue
Right.
and white and casual coastal look. Like that's definitely not it for me. But I think that there's an approach to living in California, and I don't know that it necessarily is expressed in one particular aesthetic, but I think it's just this like effortlessness and like casualness, you know, that I definitely feel like I capture in the work that I do. Um, it's definitely not lacking in formality, but I mean, I love the word effortlessness. It speaks to me. It speaks to what it is to be in California. With our,
Right.
for the most part, beautiful weather and
Beautiful weather, and just yeah, there's a lifestyle component to it, but I think as you mentioned early on, it's about the narrative that you build for your client. Um, and it could go any direction. How do you keep up on the ever-changing components of the industry and the new, products and trends and things like that, and technology of how we actually work and design?
yeah. I mean, so we we go out into the world quite a bit and try to shop and explore and see what's new.
Mm,
And then obviously we have reps come into our office all the time showing us new collections and products. And I think the internet now makes it so easy with all of the social media and Pinterest and all of that. And then same thing with technology, we have partners that we outsource some of what we do in terms of the technology aspects. And then we have a really great system in place in our office where we are able to kind of stay on top of things without having to get lost in spreadsheets, which I will never, ever, 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 ever do again.
Is that your downfall?
um, just, so we use a program now called Studio Webware, which I know a lot of the design industry uses, and it just streamlines everything so beautifully. Um, but back in the early days of my design business, everything was in like Google spreadsheets or Excel spreadsheets, and it was just
Right.
took up so much time and was so hard to maintain. And you never knew if it was up to date or if things were accurate. And it just was, I mean, not the fun part of having a design business and some of the new technology. I mean, studio's been around for a while, but we've been on it for quite a while too, but just so many of the different technologies that are available now make it so much easier to kind of dial in those aspects so that you're not spending so much time. You can really focus on, the design aspects and the exploration of product and all kinds of amazing things. And, we even take days to go visit the museum and get inspired by, just art and culture in general,
That's fantastic.
feeds that creativity.
So when you started to where you're at now, is there a particular project? It's a two-part question. A
Okay.
particular project that you are immensely proud of, and is there a project that you kind of look back, it's like, wow, I didn't expect that response?
I can't think of one for the second part of that. And I kind of feel like every time I complete a project, I feel like, wow, that was amazing. Um, I would say that the Cappy is a high point, though. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a really big deal to me. That's Ray Cappy, like, and who he is in the industry and what he did for architecture in California and just the pedigree of who he is, and that I was able to have that experience with him. He was able to acknowledge me in the way that he did.
That's great.
Um, like that. It was years ago now, but it's yeah. I can't imagine anything topping that.
True. You never
But
know.
yeah, you never know. But so many of my architectural heroes are no longer alive.
Mhm.
You know, um, and I mean, there's so many designers and architects who I admire now as well, who are very much alive and working. But some of those, like, groundbreaking people who we all kind of look
Mhm.
from that time period, at least for me. But yes, and all of my projects for the most part, I'm so proud of, what I'm able to achieve with my clients. And I love my clients so much. And I'm so grateful that I get to work with such incredible people.
That's fantastic. S so to change the question, maybe the second part of that last question, um, is there a project that you're surprised that you got through it? You don't have to name the project. It's just, someone's like, "I did it. I got through it," and
Yeah. I mean, so yes, there are a couple of projects like that. And they're clients who I've had actually, I've worked with them on one of them, I've worked with on two projects, and one of them I've worked with on three projects. And every time they come back and they want to work again, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And 'cause ultimately, they're amazing people, but just sometimes, there's a little bit more like angst and neuroticism involved in the process with certain clients than others. But they've got such good hearts, like, and I just, ultimately, like, they both trust me so much, and
That's good.
the
That's
result of
important.
yeah, the result of working together is quite beautiful. It's just the process. You kind of have to know, like, okay, this is who I'm getting involved with, and this is going to be, intense, and it's just going to be a lot of hand holding and taking care of, and knowing this has nothing to do with me. This is just who they are, and they probably do it everywhere in their life. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a couple of those.
I think every designer or creative has experienced that. Is there a project or a client that you asked you to do something, you're like, "Ah, I can't paint your bedroom black," or I don't know, just something off the wall that you thought, "That's unique."
Um, I can't think of anything. I mean, so I'm pretty good at.
You're the lucky one.
I mean, I've had people say some crazy things to me. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to
Right.
repeat what they've said to me either. But I've also, when I was younger, I can't even remember some of that because it was so long ago. But I mean, at this point, I've gotten really good at recognizing when something's not going to be a fit and I
Right.
don't take these projects. Um, and I don't know. I mean, no, I mean, sometimes clients, maybe even some of my current clients have suggested things that when they just don't seem consistent, I just come back and I'm kindly like, that's a really interesting perspective. But again, I don't know that it kind of suits our narrative. And if you can explain to me how it fits in here, let's explore
Mm,
it further. I'm pretty open and fluid in that regard. I'm pretty
mhm.
organic in terms of the way that I approach things. I'm definitely not an ego. I never come into a project and I'm like, okay, I'm here now and this is going to be the way that it goes. And
Right.
my way is the way. So I'm pretty open to that, kind of back and forth with a client. And, it's intriguing if they bring something that seems totally inconsistent. And again, I just come back to educating and um, doing what I do as the expert and reminding them that's super cool, but is it appropriate for this?
Right. No black walls.
I like a
Eh,
black ball.
maybe.
Depends
Is
on the.
there what inspires you to be a creative? What gets you up in the morning thinking, okay, another day of passion of doing what you do?
Gratitude. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I- it's just who I am. Like,
Mhm.
I am a creative being. So if I were to try to suppress that, I would probably be sick. So I have to. And if I don't have an opportunity to be creative, then I'm probably sitting at my piano expressing it because it's just something that flows through me, and always has. So, I obviously I wake up some days and I'm like, I don't even want to get out of bed. But typically I wake up and I'm just so grateful that I have all of the opportunities in front of me to be able to be creative and express myself. And I'm always so grateful to my clients that they've chosen me, you know?
That's good. That's very
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So before we wrap up, is there any closing comments or how about a word of wisdom?
Word of wisdom? Well, thank you so much. I'm so
Oh,
grateful that you chose me and that you invited me to be
absolutely.
here. Um, Word of wisdom. Don't take it personally. Everybody's out there living their lives and trying to do the best that they can. I truly believe that we all have good inside of us. And particularly in this business of design, we're working with people on one of the most intimate and um, charged things in their lives, particularly in the residential sector, and it's incredibly stressful. And I think
Mm,
that people do freak out, and for the
mm.
most part, it has nothing to do with us. I mean, unless someone's really running a disorganized and, you
Right.
know, unfortunate business. But like for the most part, clients are going to freak out, and it's not personal.
Right.
It's kind of their job. And it's our job to remind them everything's okay. They're good.
It works out in the end.
Yeah. You know,
Well, Sarah, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you for giving us some time. Is there anything you would like to share so our listeners know how to get in touch with you, how to knock on your door and say, we want to hire you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way is to go to our Instagram, which is at SR Interiors, plural. I am the person that answers you. If you send me a DM, I will definitely get back to you. Um, we have a website. It's sarahrosenhaus.com. And there's a contact form there as well. But, I'd love to hear from anybody that has enjoyed this interview and wants to know more about me. Happy to just chat.
Well, thank you so much again, Sarah, for joining us today, and it's been an immense pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was really, really fun. I'm so glad I got to have this time with you.
All right. Great success to you.
Thank you, and you as well.